Alright, so today I'm going to be telling you about how to overcome your imposter syndrome as an international high-ticket closer. So what I've noticed after talking to hundreds of different international high-ticket closers is that most of them, they feel like frauds, even despite any kind of success. Traditional advice like the fake it till you make it is ineffective because it requires constant energy and creates a disconnect that prospects can actually sense. So what I'm going to give you here is a system designed to help you become confident by changing your core identity and not just by acting confident. From my experience, I can tell you that the imposter syndrome is an epidemic and it affects basically around 90% of international professionals, and you might be surprised to find out that even top performers making six figures feel like they're fooling everyone. Self-doubt leads to unconscious self-sabotage. You might end up lowering your prices, avoiding big deals, and turning down opportunities because you feel unworthy or fear of being exposed. Now, the biggest issue here is that for international closers, this feeling is actually amplified. Every mispronounced word or grammar mistake feels like evidence that you don't belong in sales. And this can create a unique and intense form of self-doubt. Imposter syndrome strikes hardest not during the easy parts of a call, but when prospects ask detailed, rapid-fire questions that challenge your expertise, forcing you to think on your feet in a second language. When selling in a second language, your brain splits its attention between the conversation and monitoring your own language performance. One of the main problems that you might find is the fear of making grammar mistakes, so you end up constantly replaying sentences in your head, which kills your natural flow and makes you sound uncertain. Another issue that can become a big deal is obsessing too much about your accent. So worrying about how you sound can cause you to over-enunciate and try to copy accents, which sounds artificial. Another component to look out for here is cultural misunderstanding. So fearing that you'll miss a reference and be exposed as an outsider, which leads to second-guessing yourself and a loss of authenticity. Now, the problem with that is that worrying about making mistakes makes you more likely to make them. So prospects might end up rejecting you not because of your language skills, but because you're not showing up as an expert. Now, this issue isn't gonna get fixed by just having more language practice. The issue is your identity. You see yourself as a non-native speaker struggling and not as a professional who happens to have an accent. Now, most methods focus on actions like power poses or affirmations, which provide temporary and performance-based confidence, but this fails because it doesn't really change your core identity. The core problem here is that you cannot outperform your self-concept for long. Your results will always regress to match your underlying identity. Now, I call this system the identity loop framework. This approach rewires your self-perception at a foundational level. Now, in order for you to understand this, I want you to picture exactly who you are right now and who you want to end up being. Your current identity is the imposter story you're currently telling yourself. And the desired identity is the confident closer you already are when you are at your best. Now, in order to achieve that, you need to go through the bridge, which is the specific practices and thought patterns that transition you from your current identity to the desired one. Now, the reason why this works so well is because it targets the root cause of your imposter syndrome. That's the gap between who you think you are and who you think you should be. Now, the first step here would be catching your imposter voice. So you do this by becoming a non-judgmental observer of your negative thoughts in real time. So basically, all you have to do here is simply notice them by saying to yourself, you know what? I'm noticing that I'm having thoughts that I'm not good enough. So what this is doing is this is going to create a distance. The third step here would be to anchor your new identity. So in order to do this, you need to create and use a specific identity declaration that captures who you are becoming, such as I'm a confident and capable closer who consistently delivers value. And you need to make sure to use this as a mental reset button every time you start having doubts about yourself. So if you actually want to make this stick into your brain, you need to implement this onto your daily routine. So the first thing you need to do is before you start your day, you consciously choose and state your desired identity so that you can prime your brain for success. Then every evening, you need to make sure that you write down at least 3 small wins for the day. And the reason behind this is that this actually counters the brain's natural negative bias and builds a tangible record of your capabilities. Now, if you actually want to make this stick into your brain and become part of your new identity, you need to make sure that you reflect on how your actions actually align with your desired identity. There is a very critical difference between learning from mistakes, which is a sort of a healthy reflection, and beating yourself up over them, which is like a really harsh and negative criticism. The problem is that most closers that I know actually engage in the negative criticism, which reinforces the imposter syndrome. Now, one of the key indicators that could tell you that you're actually using destructive constructive criticism is using extreme words or absolute terms like "I'm always messing things up" or "I can never get things right." All these expressions actually attack your identity, and it leads to shame and self-doubt. So instead, what you need to be doing is focusing on more healthy reflections, learning focused questions like, what can I learn from this? And analyze the actions like, okay, so I handled this objection poorly. So what things can I do better next time so that this doesn't happen again? And these are the actions and the reflections that will actually lead to growth. The truth is that treating yourself with kindness after a setback is actually a performance tool. Like elite athletes, top performers know that self-compassion leads to a faster recovery and improvement. Your true identity actually shows up when you are under pressure from a high-value prospect. So whenever you're faced with a challenge, like a prospect questioning about your expertise, you need to run the 3-step process instantly. And then you need to anchor this identity with sentences like, "I'm a capable closer who helps people and know exactly what to do." If you keep doing this in a systematic way, the internal shift changes your external presence, and you remain curious and confident instead of defensive. And your tonality stays grounded, and the prospect senses real confidence and not a performance. Now, the key idea that I want you to bring home here is that the imposter syndrome doesn't appear because of a skills gap. It's an identity gap. And your ultimate goal needs to be reaching a point where your capabilities have outgrown your outdated self-concepts. Now, in order for you to take action on this today, I want you to pick one of the 3 daily practices that I just mentioned, like the identity statement, the success journaling, or the reflection, and then begin building the habits. Remember that you are not becoming someone new. You are finally becoming who you already are.